Williams family was the epitome of wealth and status in Nigeria. Mr. Williams, a manager in a prominent oil company, and his wife, Mrs. Lucy Williams, the owner of a thriving supermarket chain, had built an empire of success. They poured their love and resources into their two children, Frank and Dorothy, ensuring they lacked nothing. From private schools to lavish vacations, they lived a life most could only dream of. Their household was run like clockwork, with maids, a cook, and drivers. Grace, the young maid, who stood out for her work ethics and respect, was 22 years old, intelligent, and from a humble background. She worked tirelessly, ensuring the Williams home was immaculate, though Frank and Dorothy rarely noticed. Dorothy lived a soft and luxurious life. She was the same age as Grace, 22 years. Frank also enjoyed the luxuries, but also felt curious about the world beyond their guided cage. He was 26 years, and his father had bought a lot of properties in his name. Mr. Williams had secured his children's future. His children were respectful but clueless about the hard work that went into maintaining their lives of comfort. When Mr. Williams was offered a position in the United States, the family relocated, leaving only Grace in charge of their home in Nigeria. The move to the United States of America was a major change for the Williams family. Mr. Williams had been promoted to a senior position and they settled into a luxurious home in an upscale neighborhood. To maintain their comfort, the family hired a maid, Monica, who handled all the household chores. Despite the change in location, life remained largely the same for Dorothy. She basked in the soft life, indulging in shopping sprees and attending social events with her new friends. Frank, however, began to observe differences in how people lived around him. He had met some of his friends there in the States, so the change in location didn't really bother him. One bright Saturday morning, Frank decided to visit his longtime friend Marcus, a fellow Nigerian living in the same city. They hadn't seen each other in years since Marcus moved to the United States, and Frank was looking forward to catching up with him. Marcus lived alone. He was doing so well for himself as a tech entrepreneur. He had always been a tech guy, even back in Nigeria, effortlessly making money from his skills. But Marcus had another reputation. He was a ladies' man. Women flocked around him, and he never hesitated to enjoy their company, though he never took any relationship seriously. When Frank arrived, the two men greeted each other warmly, exchanging laughter and hearty hugs. Marcus welcomed him with a spread of snacks and drink, and they spent hours reminiscing about their lives in Nigeria, talking about their experiences in America, and of course, about women. During their conversation, Frank opened up about how moving to the United States had disrupted his plans, particularly his budding relationship with a girl he had met back in Nigeria. I was so sure about her, Marcus. I had plans for us, but now everything feels uncertain, Frank confessed. Marcus, the ever-practical one, shrugged. Life happens, man. You'll figure it out. Besides, you're here now. Make the most of it. As they spoke, Marcus casually tidied up his apartment. He straightened his cushions, arranged the books on the shelf, and even swept a corner of his room. Frank watched him curiously, surprised by his friend's hands-on approach. Marcus, Frank called out, don't you have someone to help you with all this? Marcus paused. Help? Like who? A cleaner or something. Back home, you had people who did all this for you, Frank explained. Well, you're right, but it's just me here. Why should I pay someone to do what I can handle myself? Besides, it feels so good to take care of your own space. Frank was intrigued. Growing up in a wealthy family, he had never done household chores. From a young age, everything was handled by the housekeepers. Seeing Marcus take pride in managing his home was both surprising and inspiring to Frank. When Frank returned home, his mind lingered on what he had witnessed. For the first time in his life, he felt a spark of curiosity about handling things himself. He decided to start small by tidying his room and helping Monica in the kitchen. The sudden change in Frank's behavior did not go unnoticed. His family, especially his sister Dorothy, was puzzled. Frank, Dorothy called out one evening, watching him sweep the living room. What on earth are you doing? Monica is here for all this. Frank straightened up. I know, but I want to try it myself, he said. Dorothy scoffed. You are a Williams. This is beneath you. Why would you stoop so low to do this? Frank ignored her disapproval and continued sweeping. To his greatest surprise, his father walked in with a smile. It is good for a man to know how to take care of himself and environment, Mr. Williams said. Dorothy frowned. But Daddy, we have a help. Why would Frank suddenly want to do this now? Because he's learning something valuable, Mr. Williams replied. Independence, discipline, and respect for those who do these things every day. It's a lesson many people never got to learn. Mr. Williams had always been a traditional man. Growing up in a modest household, he learned to take care of himself from a young age. He wasn't born with a silver spoon, and life demanded resilience and hard work. Determined to rise above his humble background, he vowed to provide his children with the comfort he never had, ensuring they grew up with opportunities he could only dream of. His wife, however, came from a different world, born into privilege and accustomed to the life of luxury. Mrs. Lucy Williams believed strongly in delegating household responsibilities to maids and staff. For her, chores were not made for her children. Their only focus should be enjoying life and securing prestigious careers. This difference in upbringing often sparked debate in their household. Mr. Williams, though successful, never forgot his roots. He had always believed in the values of hard work and independence. A man must learn to fend for himself, he would often say. His wife, on the other hand, dismissed that stance. That's why we have helps, she would counter. Our children shouldn't struggle. Frank had other plans. He didn't want to rely on his parents' wealth anymore or accept a monthly allowance. He wanted to carve his own path and earn his own money. His mother couldn't understand his perspective, dismissing his desire for independence as unnecessary rebellion. Things came to head when Frank received a work assignment opportunity back in Nigeria. It was a chance to not only advance his career but also reconnect with his country he still held close to his heart. When he brought up the matter at the dining table, his mother was livid. Frank, you can't be serious, she said, her voice rising. Why would you want to go back to Nigeria when there are opportunities here in the States? We have provided you with everything you need. If you want to do something, find something better to do here. But Frank hesitated, torn between his mother's wish and his own ambition. He glanced at his father, hoping for support, and Mr. Williams, who had been quietly observing the conversation, finally spoke up. Well, there is nothing wrong with Frank's decision. If he feels it's right to move to Nigeria, we should support him. A man must learn to take risks and stand on his own 2 feet. Mrs. Williams shot at her husband a disapproving look. You can't be serious, dear. He doesn't need to go all the way to Nigeria to prove a point. But Mr. Williams remained unmoved. It's not about proving a point, dear. It's about growth. Frank is now a man, and he should be free to make his own decisions. If he believes this opportunity is what he needs, then I think we should support him. Frank felt a wave of relief and gratitude towards his father. For the first time, he felt truly seen and supported. His mother, though still upset, reluctantly dropped the subject, knowing her husband's word carried weight. The decision to return to Nigeria marked a turning point in Frank's life. It was a chance to embrace the independence he craved for and prove to himself that he could succeed on his own terms. As he packed his bags and prepared for the journey ahead, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination, ready to face whatever challenges laid ahead. Back in Nigeria, Frank moved into his father's house. On his first day, Grace, their longtime house help, came around to clean and prepare a meal for her boss's son. It's been years since Frank last saw her, and he was pleasantly surprised by how much she had changed. Grace carried herself with confidence, and Frank couldn't help but notice her beauty. You have done an amazing job keeping this place in order, Frank said, genuinely admiring as he watched her move around the house. Grace blushed and smiled shyly. Thank you, sir. It's my job, she replied humbly. Over the weeks, Grace continued coming around to clean and cook for Frank. As they spent time together, their conversation became deeper. Frank took a keen interest in her life and wanted to know more about her struggles and aspirations. Grace confided in him about how she had used her earnings to support her siblings' education and train herself in a catering school. Frank was deeply moved by her resilience and admired her strength and selflessness. Meanwhile, Frank attempted to reconnect with the girl he had been seeing before leaving Nigeria. However, he discovered she had gotten married. The news left him disappointed and heartbroken. Realizing there was nothing he could do about it, he decided to focus on his new job and the goal that had brought him back to Nigeria. Months passed, and the demands of his new job began to take a toll on him. He fell seriously ill, and Grace stepped in to take care of him. Without hesitation, she decided to stay in the house until he recovered. She helped him to the bathroom, ensured he ate, fed him, and watched over him as he slept. Her care was unwavering, and Frank couldn't help but feel deeply loved in a way he had never experienced before. Her attention felt so warm and genuine that Frank jokingly thought to himself, I wouldn't mind staying sick if this means getting this kind of treatment. When Frank finally regained his strength, Grace announced that she would be leaving the house, and Frank thanked her so much and gave her an offer to start living in the house that he would also pay her some money. Grace politely declined, wanting to resume her usual schedule. After she left, Frank found himself thinking about Grace more often than expected. The way she took care of him, her selflessness, her soft smile, and her strength lingered in his mind. Unbeknownst to him, Grace was also thinking about him. She admired the way Frank spoke to her with kindness and respect, something she rarely experienced in her relationship. Her boyfriend treated her poorly, often belittling her and sometimes even resorting to physical violence. She wished her boyfriend was like Frank. One day, when Grace came to clean the house, Frank noticed bruises on her arms. Concerned, he gently asked her what happened. Grace hesitated, but eventually opened up about the abuse she had been enduring in her boyfriend's house. Anger and sadness welled up in Frank as he listened. You do not deserve this, Frank said. Why would you live with someone who abuses you every time? I want you to move back here like before. You'll be safe here. Grace initially resisted, worried about what people might say, but Frank's genuine concern reassured her. She finally agreed and moved back into the house. Living under the same roof, Frank and Grace found themselves drawn to each other in unexpected ways. They often bumped into each other, stealing glances and sharing lingering looks. Their connection grew deeper with each passing day, though neither of them dared to speak about it. One evening, unable to hold back any longer, Frank summoned the courage to confess his feelings. Grace, he began, I can't keep this to myself anymore. I really do care about you. I've been hoping that someday I would have the courage to tell you how I feel about you. You've brought something into my life I didn't even know I was missing. Grace, I really do like you a lot. Grace was stunned, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined someone like Frank could feel this way about her. After a moment of silence, she smiled and admitted, I've been feeling the same way about you, but I was afraid to say a thing. Frank drew her close and gave her a warm hug. From that day onward, their relationship blossomed. Frank was determined to make Grace feel valued and loved in every way. Knowing his mother's high standard, he decided to help Grace transform her life. He took her shopping, updating her wardrobe with elegant clothes that enhanced her beauty. He guided her on refining her style and building confidence, ensuring she could hold her own in any settings. Recognizing her passion for catering, Frank went a step further. He invested in her dream by opening a restaurant for her. Grace threw herself into the business, and her skills and dedication quickly earned the restaurant a reputation for excellence. Through it all, Frank and Grace's love grew stronger. They complemented each other in ways that felt effortless, and their bond was built on mutual respect and admiration. Grace was so grateful and thankful to Frank for changing her life for good. She promised to be the best girlfriend ever. He informed his parents about his relationship with Grace, spoke about how Grace had grown into a big lady and her achievements. And to his greatest surprise, his mother accepted Grace into the family. Thank you so very much, guys, for watching. Please do also like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories, movie reviews, and recommendations. See you guys in my next video. Until then, stay splendid.